On March 12th, Georgia will hold its first statewide election this year, the presidential primary. Lawmakers have filed several election-related bills, and we will talk about a few of them tonight. Joining me are two attorneys, Republican Representative Bob Leverett of Elberton. He's chairman of the House Reapportionment and Redistricting Committee. And Democratic Representative Draper of Atlanta. She's a civil rights attorney. Welcome to Lawmakers to both of you.
Thank you.
So, Chairman Leverett, we're going to start with you. You're co-sponsor of HB 976, which would require optical scan voting systems to use paper with a visible watermark as a security feature. Tell us about it.
Well, this is Chairman LaHood's bill. He's the chief sponsor, but we already have a ceramic coating on the ballots that we use, and so there is a security feature already in place there, but it's not visible to the naked eye. You have to use a wand to perceive the coating. So the bill seeks to require a watermark to be placed on all the ballots so the public will be able to see the ballot, see that watermark, and know that it's a proper ballot, legitimate ballot.
Yeah, and people, I don't think, realize that there's a ceramic coating on their ballots.
That's correct. I don't think they do, because it's not intended to be visible. You have to use a special device to take a look at it. So this bill, Chairman LaHood collaborated with the Secretary of State's office. Director Sterling actually came to our committee meeting, which I appreciate him taking the time to do. And we talked some about the costs and the different sort of logistical features of it, but I think it's very workable. The costs are very manageable. The state would bear the cost, so it wouldn't be forcing another cost on our counties. So it seems like a really good way to instill some additional public confidence, a very kind of low-cost, high-value move.
And it could be ready by March 12th.
I don't know that it would be ready by the primary, by the presidential preference primary, but it would certainly be ready for the general election.
Okay. I want to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'm generally not opposed to the bill. I do think as a general matter, when we're talking about making policy based on additional security needs in elections, that does raise a red flag. I mean, we all want security in our elections, but the fact of the matter is we have extremely secure elections in Georgia. The level of convicted voter fraud in Georgia is infinitesimally small. So when we're thinking about election security policy changes, we have to think about them in terms of ballot access. We have to find that balance between access and security. And I think as lawmakers, we have to be very careful about finding that right line.
Okay. I want to talk to you about a bill you have that would see, you want to see an end to runoff elections, and that the candidates in this state must win 50% of the vote plus one. Talk about that.
Yes, so we have so many elections in Georgia, more than almost any other state. We are the only state that has a runoff both after the primary election and after the runoff election. So what my bill would do is reduce that 50% threshold that a candidate currently has to get in order to avoid a runoff. They would bring it down to 45. And what that accounts for is your elections where maybe you have three candidates, maybe one candidate gets 2% of the vote. They're not really a viable candidate, but it's enough to keep those other two viable candidates from reaching that 50% threshold.
Okay. So I want to ask you what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I respect Representative Draper very much. She has a lot of very good and creative ideas, and I'm intrigued by this one. I'm a little cautious. I know the runoffs get a lot of criticism, but I do believe they serve a useful purpose. So while I believe it certainly merits further study, I'm not exactly sure I'm in full support of it yet, but I do salute her for trying to come up with a way to save costs for communities.
Yeah, so a plurality is what you're looking for.
I am, and the majority of Georgians are actually for getting rid of runoffs. It ruins our Thanksgiving. It's extremely expensive, and when people come back for runoffs, a much smaller number of people come back than voted in the general.
Yeah, so there was a bit of runoff fatigue. I would like to say that in the last few years we've had that. I also wanted to talk about your bipartisan bill, HB 559. Yes. You hope will help voters with children 5 years old and under when it comes to going to the polls.
Yes. So I'm a mom of 3 small kids. I know how hard it is just to even get out of the house sometimes. When I went knocking on doors as a candidate, I'd talk to other parents and, said, have you voted yet? And they're like, do you hear the kids in the background? No, we haven't voted yet. So, I just don't think, and this is a bipartisan supported bill, as you mentioned, that should be an obstacle to getting to the polls. And the idea is simply, if you have a child, a baby, an infant, and you get to the polls and there's a long line, you can go to the front.
Okay, what do you think of that?
Well, I like the idea. We voted it out of committee last year. It just wasn't able to make it to the floor. But, I'm supportive of that bill.
Okay. I want to talk to you about what you were busy doing about 6 weeks ago, maybe a little bit more than
Seems a bit
that,
longer.
in December when we had the special session to deal with redistricting. And so since that time, of course, we know that the maps have been approved by a federal judge. I'm thinking you're feeling pretty good about things right now.
I was a little tough to live with a few days after the order came down. I appreciate Judge Jones very much for ruling the way he did. We certainly were trying during session to make sure we complied, to read his order carefully and comply, because I respect Judge Jones very much, and I certainly respect the authority of a federal court. So it was gratifying for him to find that we had complied.
Did you hold your breath a little bit, waiting to see?
I did. There were a lot of arguments against the things we were doing, and I started to question myself a little bit, but I was pleased that Judge Jones came back and said he thought we had done what he wanted.
All right, Representative Draper?
I just think there's a bigger question that's raised here. It's whether politicians should be the ones drawing these maps. You know, there's very clear conflicts of interest. There's very clear partisan gerrymandering, which under our current constitution or under the current SCOTUS is allowed. So, you know, do we really want politicians choosing their voters, or should it be voters choosing their politicians? Those are things we could change if we wanted to.
Yeah. Anything else on redistricting? I know that there's still some things in the works, right?
Yes, ma'am. The Judge Jones's original order, which we complied with, has been appealed. And so we're still in the course of appealing the original ruling.
Can you talk about what that is, the appeal is? What are they appealing?
Well, they're appealing his finding that the original districts that we drew in 2021 did not comply with the Voting Rights Act. So we've appealed that ruling. That's going to take several years to work its way through the courts, I imagine. But we went ahead and did comply with the order during special session, but the bill that we passed does have a provision that would revert back to the 2021 districts if we do prevail at some point with that appeal.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people understand that is still a possibility,
yes,
right?
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It definitely is.
Yeah, and that'll get you working again. Will a special session need to be in place again?
It depends on when, first of all, if that happens, and then when it happens. So we might have to have a special session, but we might not. We won't know till we get there.
Okay, and we'll keep you up to date on it. I want to thank both of you for being here today. Thank you so